My name is Tina Marie Curiel-Allen. My preferred gender pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm 38 years old. I am daughter to Gonzalo Juan Curiel and Eleanor Cecilia Vega Curiel, and also partner to Bradley William Allen. To add who I also represent, I also proudly represent former heroin and opioid addicts, former drug addicts, and formerly incarcerated folks as well. I was born in the Bay Area, and my parents, who also grew up in the Bay Area, I was born in Hayward, they decided to move us to the Central Valley. So I grew up in Ceres, California, which is a very small agricultural town in the Central Valley, very conservative. And what was it like there? I grew up in a very conservative religion. My parents were evangelical Christians. And so it was a really strange way to grow up with this really strict religion and not wanting to be part of the outside world. And then also growing up in a conservative environment where they took us from our family and community of color in the Bay Area. Well, I started using drugs at 12. And in looking back at it, I'm really thankful to drugs and alcohol because I had a lot of emotional and mental health problems that I didn't have language for. I didn't know how to understand. And my parents also didn't have skills with how to help me because they didn't understand them either. My parents were raised really like if you're surviving and if you're alive and if you're not being shot or stabbed or hunted by the police or whatever, you're okay, right? So at a pretty young age, I was an emotional kid. I think I probably needed maybe some other type of support or help that my parents didn't know how to give me. And so I started drinking at 12 and then very quickly progressed to drugs. And prior to that, I was cutting myself and burning myself and doing a lot of things that when I look back, I was pretty much like a kid in an after-school special that needed help and wasn't getting it. And pretty isolated and didn't have like adults in my life that could help me in that way for whatever reason. So drugs and alcohol early on, I feel like saved my life in that I think I might have tried to commit suicide. And so I think that they halted that for me and provided me with an escape early on, and then they continued doing that. So with that comes like a whole different relationship to drug addiction because basically when I got sober at 24 is when I kind of started growing up in a lot of ways. So I didn't really feel external stigma because I was like a kid doing drugs, among other people that were doing drugs. So it wasn't until later when I got out of jail and when I got sober in my mid-20s where I started, and not being in like a world of protected people that were having similar experiences as my own, that's when I started kind of realizing the stigmas and the things that people didn't want to talk about, and that my background might bring certain judgments. So it was once I started like venturing out from either the community I grew up in or my own family. And my support was mostly by way of coming into contact with jail. I started getting arrested at 18. And so sometimes I'd be sent to a drug program, or sometimes I'd be sent to alternative work program. So I received support through, I guess, state agencies and social services early on. And then I ended up getting sober through a diversion program called Drug Court, which is a year-long program that focuses on social, emotional education, psychological education, understanding addiction, and a lot of other things. And that's really what helped me to kind of rebuild and understand myself in a different way, was that year-long program. And so I was 24 and I went to a conference for people in recovery for young people. And I remember it very clearly. I remember what I was wearing. I remember I was smoking a cigarette and sitting there. And I had seen, there was thousands of people there. And I had actually seen a speaker speak talking about their story. And this woman had the same birthday as me. She was young. She looked like me. She looked like someone that I kind of could admire or imagine myself wanting to be like. And she was unapologetically sober and honest about where she had come from and what her life was like then and now. And I had this moment, I'm smoking a cigarette outside after I saw her speak, where really based on like the representation and inspiration that I got from her, I thought, well, what would happen if I actually tried to stay sober? Keeping in mind I had started doing drugs so young, I didn't really have goals as a teenager. So in my mid-20s, I had this moment through this representation where I asked myself this question of like, what if I try to stay sober and allow for different possibilities? And that was really scary, honestly, because I understood myself in a certain context with like drugs surrounding it. So I kind of felt the earth move under my feet. And that was like I was about 6 months sober already, but that was really when I made my commitment of like, I'm going to try to build my life this way and see what happens. Well, definitely, I mean, I'm a textbook example of the benefit of diversion services in lieu of, say, prison. So whatever those policies are that are viewing addiction or substance abuse or opioid abuse disorder, whatever it's called now, whatever the policies are that are starting to see it as a problem that people need treatment for and not to be criminalized for, that helped me very much because it allowed me to get into the drug court program. What policies might have hurt me? Well, the war on drugs, those policies have historically hurt people of color by getting harsher sentences and things like that. The recovery community and I do believe this, every choice I made and everything I went through brought me to where I am today, but some of the things that I think could have helped me early on, I think I needed therapy, you know? I think I really could have benefited from, I didn't know words like culturally rooted or ceremonies or cultural healing. I didn't know terms like that. But I think I could have really benefited from not only some type of like social services or treatment that way, like potentially therapy, or people that look like me that had possibly gone through these types of things but were living a different life. My parents' relationship to law enforcement and to like powers that be definitely affected my trust of law enforcement, my trust of outsiders. So I think I could have benefited from if there could have in my own community been like a place that people went to, or visible people that looked like me that had gone through things like myself, like maybe in the streets or like maybe changing community norms, talking about addiction in different ways, understanding the history of drugs on communities of color. I think I could have benefited from like ethnic studies education, understanding myself in context of history and things like that, and understanding my parents that way. So really like a lack of resources and then also lack of representation when I was young. Helping someone to understand themselves in the context of history, being able to work towards healing for oneself and their family. Somehow like the language around addiction and drug use and blame and things like that, if there was policies written that could somehow allow for the healing and allow also for that historical understanding and lens, that would be very helpful. And then to make that healing be intergenerational, if there was a way to bring those family members in. Addiction does not happen in a vacuum. So a lot of people, their parents were alcoholics or drug addicts as well. So healing that would also involve getting to look at one's family and work towards healing for all of them, I think that would be very helpful. I would say I'm in a place where I have a sense of agency over my life, where I have an understanding of who I am and of who I came from, and how my parents' traumas in turn affected me, in turn led to my traumas, and how if I heal from those, I can also work on trying to heal from my parents. I'm in a place where I unapologetically can be who I am in all aspects. I can live my politics fully. I get paid to live my politics and to work for my people. I'm very proud of that. And all of that comes from like the experiential knowledge that I got really from my drug addiction and from my experiences within the system. I'm in a place now where I'm able to use that experience and knowledge in a good way. And I'm in a place now that I'm far enough from my addiction and my criminal record to where I have a lot of privileges also, because I'm educated now, so those privileges I'm able to now use for people that are the same as myself, for people that are my family members, that are my mirrors, to be a different mirror and reflection of possibility. So I would say I'm really proud of the place that I'm in, and a lot of that came from my struggles leading to my understanding of self.